Hello everyone, please press subscribe, press follow, press the bell so you don't miss any new clips. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Author by Flying Alone. Audio novels by Novelist. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 56. Who Wants Your Pill Formula? So young. Whether it was the field of martial arts or the field of alchemy, there has never been a lack of geniuses, but Ling Han was only how old? 17 years old, 18 years old. Even if he had been studying alchemy from the moment he was born, how many years of experience could he have accumulated at such a young age? And what alchemist had not gone through the process of concocting massive amounts of pills to accumulate experience before finally gaining recognition? So which aristocratic family specializing in alchemy is young friend the heir to? Zhang Weishan asked very politely. He knew Zhu Hixin very well, and knew that it was impossible that the latter would actually make a joke about this kind of thing. I'm self-taught, Ling Han said. He was already the alchemist emperor, how could he be the heir to someone else? Zhang Weishan was even more shocked, whereas Xuanmu Changfeng still thought that Zhu Hixin must be joking around. The most important thing in alchemy was inheritance. For example, in the case of pill formulae, without a master or teachings of one's clansmen, how else would one have obtained them? By pondering over it oneself. What a joke, all pill formulae were the accumulated result of multiple generations of alchemists' work. If one depended on their own efforts to create a completely new pill formula, then one may only be able to invent only one or two types after spending their whole lives hard at work, but there was no guarantee of the effects. Old man Zhang, take out the pill formula for the reverse pill first, Zhu Hixin urged. He believed that as long as Ling Han helped, it would definitely scare these two old men witless. Zhang Weishan was slightly doubtful. Even if the formula for the reverse pill was not complete, it was still extremely valuable, and he had sacrificed a lot to obtain it. It was like a book of secret martial arts skills who would easily show it to others. Brother Zhang, you can't. Xuanmu Changfeng immediately shook his head. Even such an important man as he had sacrificed a considerable amount just to be able to have a glance at this formula, and that was still while taking into consideration the fact that he was assisting with the patching up work of the reverse pill formula. Otherwise, the price he had to pay would be even larger. Who does this brat think he is to be able to easily see the pill formula? Zhang Weishan looked at Zhu Hixin. It was not that he distrusted this good friend of his. It was just that Ling Han was really too young, making him feel that Ling Han wasn't very dependable. Old man Zhang, you don't trust me. Zhu Hixin was angered. This was a real grandmaster alchemist. Even he wanted nothing more than to follow Ling Han and benefit from his teachings. Unfortunately, he lacked the qualifications to be accepted by Ling Han as a disciple. Yet Xuanmu Changfeng actually dared to doubt Ling Han's ability and think that the latter was not qualified to see the pill formula. How could this not enrage him? If it was not for considering Zhang Weishan's face, he'd be picking a fight with Xuanmu Changfeng now. Zhang Weishan frowned lightly. From the bottom of his heart, of course he was willing to trust Zhu Hixin. After all, they have been good friends for dozens of years. How could he not understand what kind of person Zhu Hixin was? However, Ling Han was really much too young, so young that he didn't even look the slightest bit like a grandmaster alchemist. Good. Zhu Hixin saw the doubt in Zhang Weishan's eyes, and was angered to the point that his chest was trembling. He said, Zhang Weishan, since you don't trust me, then from today onwards, we will no longer be friends. Old man Zhu. Zhang Weishan turned pale due to shock. Zhu Hixin had even said that he would break off their friendship, proving how furious he was. He hurriedly waved his hands and said, don't be angry, I'll take it out right now, all right. You don't have to force yourself. Zhu Hixin gave a humph. In his eyes, Ling Han was the alchemy emperor that stood at the top of the world, and Zhang Weishan's attitude was already very disrespectful. As a result, he felt ashamed in front of Ling Han, so how could he still bear to ask Ling Han for help to patch up the pill formula? Young friend Ling, I'm really sorry. The old man said apprehensively to Ling Han. Ling Han gave a wave of his hand before looking at Xuanmu Changfeng, and said, "Do you think that I would consider the formula for the reverse pill important? Ha ha. Then let me recite the names of some medicinal ingredients for you. Violet smoked leaf, thousand blossom fruit, windless grass." In one breath, he recited out more than 10 different medicinal ingredients. Xuanmu Changfeng was unable to make heads or tails of it. What on earth was he talking about? But Zhang Weishan's expression kept changing, and his hands had also started trembling, his gaze becoming more and more feverish. How could he not know what Ling Han was saying? These were the ingredients written on the pill formula for the reverse pill. However, there were 3 ingredients which could not be clearly read, and the quantities required for one of the ingredients had also been blurred. Ling Han did not recite any other medicinal ingredients. All of the ingredients he recited belonged to the formula, and he had even recited an additional 3 ingredients. What did that mean? That he had possession of the complete formula for the reverse pill. What a joke. He had actually been so petty, and did not bear to take out a formula that was incomplete. He really felt so embarrassed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. "Young friend, please forgive this Zhang Weishan's ignorance." Zhang Weishan clasped his hands, and bowed so deeply that his head was at Ling Han's waist level, showing how respectful this apology was. Ling Han was unmoved. He had come to guide Zhang Weishan out of kindness, yet had to suffer the latter's doubt, so of course he was not pleased. Xuanmu Changfeng was even more convinced that these 2 old men had already lost their minds to be so easily bluffed by this little brat. He gave a humph and said, "Brat, I don't know what trick you're playing, but you want to trick me, that's completely impossible. Brother Xuanmu, please leave." Zhang Weishan suddenly straightened from his bow and said coldly. "What?" Xuanmu Changfeng almost leaped up from his seat. "Has your head been kicked by a mule? You had still been standing on the same side with me just now, and now you're actually pointing the spear at me. How can you be so ungrateful? Brother Zhang, what is the meaning of this?" His expression also turned cold. "The things you've gifted me, I will have someone send it back later. For now, you are not welcomed here," Zhang Weishan said indifferently. He had almost been deceived by Xuanmu Changfeng, and had almost missed the opportunity to come into contact with a Grandmaster Alchemist, so whatever good feelings he had towards Xuanmu Changfeng had disappeared. He could barely hold himself back from biting his head off now. For any alchemist, there was no higher honor than restoring an ancient pill formula. Good, good. Xuanmu Changfeng's face had turned ashen. For someone who excelled both in the fields of alchemy and sword arts and whose position was so venerable like him, to actually be turned out by someone, and moreover, for the cause of it all to be a little brat, how could he not be furious? With a swing of his sleeves, he stepped out of the door. Before he left, his eyes swept over Ling Han, and they were filled with coldness. Apparently, he had blamed everything on Ling Han. This was really uninvited trouble. Ling Han shook his head. Xuanmu Changfeng was in gushing spring tear, and was not someone he could fight on equal footing yet, so he could not be careless. "Old man Zhu, are you satisfied now?" Zhang Weishan said with a smile. "How tactful of you." Zhu Hixin glared at Zhang Weishan for a moment. No matter what, they had been old friends for so many years, so the words he spoke just now had only been out of anger and irritation. He walked over to Ling Han, bowed deeply, and said, "Young friend, this old and useless man apologizes to you." "This old fellow too." Zhang Weishan bowed again. However, his attitude still was not comparable with Zhu Hixin's. Zhu Hixin addressed himself as "this old and useless man," whereas he addressed himself as "this old fellow," so it seemed that he was still putting on some airs. But Xizan Tai, who had been standing at the side all this while, was dumbfounded. Her master had actually chased off Xuanmu Changfeng, a man who excelled both in alchemy and martial arts, because of Ling Han. Furthermore, he had even started a feud with the other. This brat was really too capable. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 57. Join the queue. Ling Han walked over to the study table and took up a pen and paper. With very good penmanship, he immediately started writing on the paper. He wrote very quickly, and soon lifted his pen from the paper. He then handed the paper he had written on to Zhang Weishan. Because of Zhu Hixin, he had still decided to give Zhang Weishan a helping hand. After all, the old man has always been at his beck and call, and has helped him considerably. More importantly, it was he who had provided Ling Han with information about the whereabouts of the Earth Dragon grass. Zhang Weishan received the paper, and as his eyes swept over it, an expression of surprise and joy appeared on his face. This was the pill formula for the reverse pill. It definitely was, because not only were the medicinal ingredients the same as what he had on his incomplete formula, even the quantities required were the same. Furthermore, there were even additional 3 ingredients that could not be read from the incomplete formula. Zhang Weishan was extremely excited because in the field of alchemy, the reverse pill was publicly known to be lost in the passage of time. Even if he had spent a large sum of money to purchase the incomplete formula, this incomplete formula had actually been inferred by many alchemists before. They had all attempted to restore the complete formula, but had not succeeded. If he managed to produce the complete pill, then his status in the world of alchemists would ascend to a whole new level. What a joke. Previously, he had still been reluctant to show the incomplete formula to Ling Han. Now wasn't reality practically slapping him in the face? The old man's face turned very red when he thought of this. Zhu Hixin gave a humph and said, "Old man Zhang, are you happy now?" He was still a little upset at what had occurred previously. He. Zhang Weishan laughed, slightly embarrassed. His hands grasped onto the pill formula as if it was some kind of ultimate treasure. Ling Han walked out of the residence, and said, "I'm going now." "Many thanks, young friend." Zhang Weishan quickly ran over. Once he knew that Ling Han was currently staying at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, he did not feel any rush to immediately repair the relationship between himself and Ling Han. Moreover, he also needed a little time to adapt. Ling Han nodded. After he stepped out of the residence, he strolled around. Hey, you are really ungenerous." Xuanhuan rushed over, an expression of rebuke on her face. Ling Han smiled, and asked, "In what way am I ungenerous?" "You obviously are not Grandmaster Zhu's disciple, and caused me to embarrass myself," she said in reproach. Previously, she had even said that she would become Ling Han's elder sister disciple and would take care of Ling Han in future. She had never thought that this guy was so awesome that even Juanmu Changfeng would be driven off because of him. "I never said I was. It was you who thought I was." Ling Han shook his head. "I don't care, you have to compensate me," Xuanhuan said shamelessly. "Then how do you want me to compensate you?" Ling Han asked. Xuanhuan tilted her head, thought for a while then said, "I haven't thought of it yet, so you'll owe me first." "Oh, right, are you here to participate in the Da Yuan tournament?" "That's right," Ling Han nodded. "Then I'll kindly give you some exclusive behind-the-scenes information," Xuanhuan said. "There is a considerable number of elites that have arrived to participate in the tournament this time. My 4th elder brother, of course, will be able to get first place. Aside from him, there is also Li Dongyue from the Stone Wolf sect. Apparently, he's also in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and he's mastered the yellow grade martial arts technique, Little Xuanhuan hands. Even my 4th elder brother has given him a very high appraisal. In the previous Da Yuan tournament, he got the 5th place. And there's also the 3rd son of the Jin clan, Jin Wuji. He's also a freakishly talented guy. He's mastered the Jin Yang Palm of their Jin clan. He's rumored to also have 2 flashes of palm chi, and in the previous tournament, he was 6th. And there's, let me think for a moment, an exceptional genius came from Fuyang Town. His name is Chia Zhongguang. He's only 18 this year and he's already in the 8th layer of element gathering tier. He's terrifyingly powerful in battle, and my 4th elder brother says he has the ability to enter the top 5. Right. There's also an amazing guy from Eternal River Town. What was his name again? Lu Yi. No. Was it Lu Yu, or Lu something? He's also 18 years old. and in the 8th layer of element gathering tier. He also has the ability to enter the top 5. The last is the youngest son of the sect master of Bailey sect, Bailey Tengyun. Apparently, he's just in the 7th layer of element gathering tier, but my 4th elder brother says that this guy is extraordinary, and his prowess is nowhere beneath Li Dongyuo. The girl's 4th elder brother was Qi Yongyi, the one with the nickname King of Eternal Night. He was extremely talented and very powerful, so much that even Lu Yutong had exclaimed in admiration. Although Ling Han was confident in himself, he would not be arrogant. It was just that he had too many trump cards in his hands, and he really could not think of anyone who could fight with him on even footing in the whole element gathering tier. Or at least, he could not think of anyone like that in this small Yuan city. He nodded, and said, "Thank you for your inside information." "Oh, right, 4th elder brother is hosting a feast tomorrow night. Why don't you come as well?" Xuanhuan said, "Only those martial artists who have a chance of getting into the top 50 in the Yuan tournament this time have been invited." Ling Han could not hold back a smile, and said, "Your elder brother is attracting the support of the people here. You're clever." Xuanhuan did not deny it. If Qi Yongyi intended to obtain the position of Yuan king in future, he needed to start gathering his support. It would not necessarily be the one who's extremely talented or very powerful that would obtain this royal position. It depended on one's popularity as well. If no one in the royal house was willing to support you, how would you be able to ascend to this position? Although 4th elder brother is extremely talented in the field of martial arts, eldest brother has built up his support through painstaking effort over the duration of more than 10 years. Additionally, eldest brother's mother is the daughter of the Lu clan head. So with the support and favor of the Lu clan, who would emerge victorious in the end is still uncertain. The young girl had curled her hands into fists, her face full of excitement, as if she wanted nothing more than for the 2 brothers to immediately start fighting, and allow her to spectate it to her heart's content. Aside from the king's house, there were 4 other great parties in Yuan city that could not be underestimated. They were respectively the Stone Wolf sect, Bailey sect, Jin clan and Lu clan. With the close relationship he had with the Lu clan, the eldest prince really had a big advantage in the battle for the king's position. Ling Han only thought about it for a short while before pushing it to the back of his mind. What did this battle for the king's position have to do with him? Xuanhuan kept chattering on and on, bothering Ling Han for a very long while, before she finally let him go. However, when she turned around, she revealed a very crafty smile, and murmured, "4th elder brother, 4th elder brother, I've introduced a very capable helper to you. You must not mess things up." Ling Han was someone whom even Zhu Hixin and Zhang Weishan addressed as young friend, so he must definitely have an astonishing ability in the field of alchemy. If Qi Yongyi was able to obtain Ling Han's aid, then there would definitely be innumerable martial artists willing to join him. For no other reason but for the sake of alchemical pills. When a martial artist cultivated, he would definitely need the aid of alchemical pills to support his cultivation. And if there was a high-grade alchemist overseeing things in the party, then it would naturally be very attractive to all martial artists. Ling Han naturally saw through the little girl's plot, but he did not think too much of it. He really did want to take a look at this Qi Yongyi, and see how much of a genius he was. On the second day, Ling Dongxing went with Ling Han to register. The participants for the Yuan tournament were only limited to the local area, so there was a need to provide proof of identification to go through a strict check, because this concerned the enrollment quota for the Huyang Academy. There were 36 cities in Rain Country, and it was impossible for them all to have the same average level of martial arts. Some were higher and some were lower. As a result, a martial artist who had only obtained the 60th position in a tournament in a city with a higher level of martial arts would be able to obtain the 40th position in a tournament in a city with a lower level of martial arts. Then wouldn't they all race over to a weaker city to participate in the tournament to be able to qualify for a place of enrollment in Huyang Academy? The people of Yuan City could only take part in the Yuan tournament, and the people from other cities too could not come over to participate. In this manner, everyone protected their own territory. There was a large number of people queuing up to register, and the queue was very long. Ling Han calmly joined the queue. He had already discarded the noble status of a martial artist in heaven tier he had possessed in his last life. Everything had begun anew, and he was setting out from the level of an ordinary man. There was nothing wrong with queuing up. After about 2 hours, it was almost his turn. There was only one person left in front of him. But it was at this moment that a young man escorted by 4 robust men in black forced the others in the queue aside. The 5 of them came to the registration point and directly cut into the queue in front of Ling Han. "Hey, join the queue at the back." Ling Han frowned, and said in displeasure. The young man turned to look at Ling Han, and broke into laughter. With an expression filled with disbelief, he said, "You actually want me to queue up? Do you know who I am? Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao." Chapter 58. Chief Butler. "I don't care who you are, get back to the end of the line." Ling Han spoke coldly. Ha 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 ha. The young man laughed raucously, as if he had heard the greatest joke in the world. He shook his head. "You don't know who I am. I am Jin Wuxiang. My elder brother is Jin Wuji." Jin Wuji, that was one of the strongest competitors in this round of the Da Yuan tournament. No wonder this guy was so arrogant. As a young master of the Jin clan and with a very powerful elder brother, he did have the right to behave recklessly. Unfortunately, the one he had encountered now was Ling Han. "Who cares if you're Jin Wuxiang, or Jin Wuji, whoever you are, get back to the end of the line." Ling Han gave an impatient wave of his hand. The smile on Jin Wuxiang's disappeared, replaced by an angered expression. After this brat found out who he was, he still dared to talk back to him. He gave a humph and said, "It is beneath me to lower myself to the level of a minor character like you." He turned back around, and was about to begin the registration process. "Get lost." Ling Han stretched out a hand, took hold of Jin Wuxiang's shoulder, pulled back and, shoo, the guy was flung out of the line. Peng! He crashed into the wall and slid down with a groan. He immediately grimaced in pain. "Young Master Wuxiang." The 4 men in black hurried forward to help Jin Wuxiang up. Yet Ling Han did not even afford him a glance, and said, "I would like to register." When he looked at the man responsible for registering the participants, a faintly surprised expression appeared on his face, because this ordinary-looking old man was actually an elite martial artist in Gushing Spring tier. "Bastard, you actually dare to make a move against me, and still want to pretend that nothing has happened." Jin Wuxiang shoved away the 4 robust men and strode forwards, his eyes spitting fire. He was the one and only 6th young master of the Jin clan and the younger brother of Jin Wuji, yet someone actually dared to disrespect him. "Get lost," Ling Han said coldly. "Who do you think you are, to actually be so bold to disrespect me?" Jin Wuxiang said furiously, stretching out a hand to take hold of Ling Han. "Why are you making a racket here?" The old man who was in charge of registering the participants said, very displeased. "Old guy, you dare interfere with my business." Jin Wuxiang immediately gave a humph and glared at the old man. He was used to being arrogant, plus he was currently furious, and thus he did not give his actions a second thought. Ling Han could not help shaking his head internally. This guy really was seeking his own demise. Every generation of the Jin clan is weaker than the last. The brats now are becoming more and more thoughtless, the old man sighed. He stretched out his right hand and gave it a flick. Peng! A Herculean strength rushed forth, and Jin Wuxiang directly flew out of the registration room due to the resulting shock wave. When the old man made a move, everyone finally realized in shock that this was actually a powerful elite martial artist. All of their faces were filled with astonishment. Who would have thought that an old man who was in charge of recording and registering the participants would actually be an elite martial artist laying low? "I know who this senior is, he's the chief butler of the royal house of the Da Yuan king." "What? The chief butler of the royal house of the Da Yuan king? How come he's personally doing this kind of work?" "You ask me, but whom should I ask? Someone recognized the identity of this old man, immediately causing a bout of whispering amongst the witnesses. Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang, who had intended to avenge himself, immediately became well-behaved. Although the Jin clan was powerful, it was nothing compared to the power of the royal house of the Da Yuan king. No matter how arrogant and overbearing he was not a fool. He knew what kind of people he could trifle with, and what kind of people he shouldn't even think about trifling with. He quickly fled with his tail between his legs, followed by his 4 lackeys. After all, the registration deadline was the day after tomorrow, so there was no need for him to register today no matter what. However, Ling Han had become the target of his grudge. If it wasn't for his interference, there wouldn't have been any dispute about his cutting into the queue at all. Many thanks for your fair judgment, senior, Ling Han said, raising his clasped hands in gratitude. This was an elite in Gushing Spring tier, and compared to the current him, the old man was much, much more powerful. Additionally, he had already let go of the identity of his last life as a powerful warrior of heaven tier and the Alchemy Emperor. There was nothing inappropriate about addressing the old man, senior. The old man had a bit of a blurred vision, and he smiled at Ling Han and said, to be able to break through to the element gathering tier at such a young age, such talent is really promising. My 7th young mistress is about the same age as you, so there might be chances of a match there. When everyone heard this, they could not help the weird expressions plastered on their faces. Was this chief butler here to seek a prince consort for the royal house? However, it was impossible for a princess's marriage to be decided by a butler. At most, the chief butler could only be responsible for the first round of selections. Whether the candidate passed or not would still be decided by the Da Yuan king. Even so, everyone sat up and took notice of Ling Han. To be able to gain the recognition of an elite of Gushing Spring tier, this brat must have had some outstanding quality. Yet Ling Han pondered and recalled 7th young mistress, wasn't that Chizan Tai, that young girl? He laughed loudly, and said, many thanks for your recognition, senior, but we should complete the registration process first. This brat really was quite bold to actually dare reject the chief butler in this manner. Yet the chief butler was all smiles. He was only under the command of the Da Yuan king to see if there were any outstanding geniuses in this round of the Da Yuan tournament. It was definitely not possible that Ling Han would become the son-in-law of the royal house just because he had taken a fancy to him. Good. Where are you from? How old are you? What is your cultivation level and what is your name? He asked. I am Ling Han, I came from Grey Cloud Town. After the new year, I'll be 17, and I am currently in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, Ling Han replied to each question with a smile. 1. Pooh. The eyeballs of those who were close enough to hear his reply were in danger of popping out of their heads, as if they had seen some kind of ghost. Many of them had already seen that Ling Han was in element gathering tier. Those who were not able to were clued into the fact by the words of the chief butler. But when they saw how young Ling Han was, they had all thought that he had just broken through. At most, he could only be at the peak period of the 1st layer of element gathering tier. Yet Ling Han was shockingly in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. A 17-year-old in the 4th layer of element gathering tier, this was absolutely astonishing. Even for the genius that was the 4th prince, with the endless cultivation resources supplied by the royal house, had he managed to reach the 4th layer of element gathering tier at 17 years old? Perhaps he had, but that was the farthest he could have ventured. With such a comparison, they could now easily see how freakishly talented Ling Han was. No wonder the chief butler wanted to enlist him as a prince consort candidate. Ling Han took out his proof of identification. This was something that every citizen of Rain country would receive upon their birth. For those who did not have this kind of proof of identification, if they were discovered, they would either become slaves or would be forced to flee from the country. The chief butler only gave it a brief glance, and then gave a plaque to Ling Han. This was the plaque that would allow Ling Han to participate in the Da Yuan tournament that would be held 2 days after tomorrow. Usually, no one would dare to falsify their identity. This was because once you managed to squeeze into the top 50, there would be a second check to verify your identity. If it was discovered that anyone had dared to falsify their identity, this was definitely a very heavy crime. The chief butler was very interested in Ling Han, and kept chatting with him about ordinary, daily life. He really seemed as if he intended to marry off his own daughter to Ling Han. Although everyone else was starting to feel impatient, no one dared to rush him in any way. Even without his esteemed position as the chief butler of the royal house of the Da Yuan king, as an elite martial artist in Gushing Spring tier, he was undeniably a powerful presence within the nearest 1,000 miles. It wasn't until Ling Han finally voiced his intention to leave of his own accord that the chief butler ended the conversation. Yet he still told Ling Han that if he was free, he was welcome to visit the royal house of the Da Yuan king, which caused everyone else to turn red-eyed with envy. This was the same as giving a protective charm to Ling Han. Who would dare make a move against him now? Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 59. Attending the Feast. Because the registration process took too long, Ling Dongxing and his son had their lunch before returning to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. After resting for a while, it was about close to nighttime. After Ling Han and Lu Yutong made slight preparations, they set off towards the residence of the fourth prince to attend the dinner banquet. The residence of the fourth prince was only one street away from the royal house of the Da Yuan king, so the two residences were really very close. However, out of the many children of the Da Yuan king, only two had gained the privilege of possessing their own individual residences. The first prince and the fourth prince. The first prince, Qi Yongsheng, had displayed his outstanding qualities from birth. With his extraordinary talent, as well as the fact he was the eldest son of the first wife of the Da Yuan king, he had naturally long firmly established his identity as the heir. But with the sudden emergence of the powerful fourth prince, he was currently under a great threat. Now, the position of the heir that he had maintained for so long appeared to be facing imminent danger. As a result, the competition between the two princes was getting more and more turbulent, and becoming more and more of a dilemma to the various parties as they wondered which prince they should support. If the prince they supported ascended gloriously to the royal position, that would be great, as their own status would then be raised accordingly as well. But if the prince they supported failed, when a new king is crowned, he brings to court his own favorites and expels those he disliked. The new king would definitely pay them back for their previous lack of support. Ling Han and Lu Yutong did not travel by carriage. Instead, they walked to the residence of the fourth prince. At the door, there were many guards stationed, helping to welcome the incoming guests. "Excuse me, please show us your invitation, the two of you." When a guard saw the two of them approach, he walked over and blocked them from advancing further. "Invitation?" Ling Han startled. He did not have this kind of thing, as Xuanhuan had only issued him a verbal invitation. He said, "I'm Ling Han, and I should be on the normal list for guests." "Then I apologize. Those without an invitation will not be allowed to enter," the guard said solemnly. Has that little girl, Xuanhuan, played a trick on him? Ling Han could not help thinking thus. "Ha ha ha ha, you dare to come here without an invitation," a taunting voice said. A young man stepped down from a carriage. He was dressed in luxurious formal attire, making him look very flashy. He was Jin Wuxiang, and just before noon, he had even had an argument with Ling Han. "Village boy, this here is the residence of the fourth prince, not a place anyone can simply enter freely." Jin Wuxiang laughed coldly. He then removed a gold-colored invitation from the folds of his clothes, proudly waved it around and said, "Look here clearly, this is the invitation. But a minor character like you will never receive this kind of thing in your life." He really was too pleased. At noon, because of the dread he felt towards the chief butler, he could only choose to flee with his tail between his legs. But since he has met Ling Han here at this moment, this was an opportunity gifted by heavens for him to avenge himself. Ha ha, he really must properly humiliate this guy, before killing him. Ling Han could not help shaking his head. This guy was only in the 9th layer of body refining tier, so where did his feeling of superiority come from? And he kept attracting aggression for his clan. If he encountered any elite martial artist with a bad temper, that could also possibly lead to difficulties for his clan. What are you still standing around here for? Do you think that if you stand here long enough, you'll be pitied and allowed in? Jin Wuxiang continued to sneer in derision, but once his eyes swept over Lu Yutong, his eyes could no longer remove themselves from her figure. He had only just now realized Lu Yutong's presence, and was instantly captivated by this icy beauty. He could only feel the rapidly increasing pace of his heartbeat, and the boiling of the blood in his veins. Brat, you. Peng. Jin Wuxiang had only just opened his mouth when Ling Han gave a heavy blow to his face, and his whole body was instantly flung away. This kind of prodigal young master would definitely have nothing nice to say, so Ling Han made a preemptive strike to avoid filth from entering his ears. You hit me again. Jin Wuxiang crawled up from the ground. He was full of grievances. Within this one day, he had been hit by Ling Han twice. He was the 6th young master of the Jin clan. When had he ever received such treatment? If you don't want to be hit a 3rd time, get lost. Ling Han gave a flick of his hand. How dare you, are you really so tired of living? Jin Wuxiang's eyes were spitting fire, and he said to the guards around them, you have all seen it, right? This guy actually dared to beat up a guest of the 4th prince, are you not going to apprehend him? This guy was not stupid, he knew how to take advantage of the situation. Master Ling, please cooperate. One of the guards stepped out, you must come with us. Although all of them knew that the 6th young master of the Jin clan was a standard prodigal young master and there were 100 times more people in the city that disliked him than those who liked him, this was the residence of the 4th prince. How could others be allowed to act impertinently in this place? Jin Wuxiang could not help feeling very proud of himself. He was feeling extremely superior because of his own cleverness. See, who was the one who said he'd be nothing without his clan? Hey, what's the commotion here all about? A young girl dressed in courtly attire walked out, hands behind her back and a crafty expression on her face. It was Xuanhuan. Greetings, 7th princess. All of the guards hurriedly saluted. Rise. The young girl raised her hand in a mature, experienced manner. When she looked at Ling Han, she deliberately put on a surprised expression, and said, Yi, why are you still outside? Ling Han understood now. The girl had purposely not issued him an invitation just to see a good show. As a result, she must have waited near the door, and naturally had witnessed the conflict between Ling Han and Jin Wuxiang. She could have already stepped out early on to stop it, but had only stepped out now. This showed that this girl was the kind of person that desired to see the world in chaos. When they heard her words, the guards naturally realized that Ling Han was truly one of the guests tonight, so there was no longer any need to bother about little details like why he did not have an invitation. And since the 7th princess has already spoken, they could not possibly still intend to apprehend Ling Han. Master Ling, apologies for our lacking manners, all the guards said in unison to Ling Han. Ling Han only gave Xuanhuan a stern gaze, but the girl did not feel scared at all. She stuck out her tongue at him and quickly ran over to Lu Yutong and said, "Wa, big sister, you're very beautiful." Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang was infuriated half to death. It seemed like he was a hideous person doing mischief, seeking his own humiliation. His eyes focused on Ling Han, and he naturally thought that Ling Han had clung onto Xuanhuan for her power and influence. And when he recalled that Ling Han still had an extraordinarily beautiful maiden by his side, he immediately realized, this guy was a master at picking up girls, and was a professional at living off women. When he thought in this way, he looked even further down at Ling Han. Many thoughts ran through his mind, like how could he kill Ling Han and avenge himself. Just when his thoughts took a venomous turn, he saw Ling Han walk over to him. He could not help straightening up into a pompous stance, and said, "You want to make peace with me now? It's too late. I will definitely." Pa. He received a firm, solid slap, and was completely dumbfounded. He, the one and only 6th young master of the Jin clan, had actually been slapped in a public setting. What great shame and humiliation was this? 1. And all around them, whether it was Xuanhuan, the guards, or the guests who had arrived subsequently, they could not help gasping when they saw this scene. If a conflict happened amongst the younger generation, it was fine and a normal thing. None of the older generation of the clans would make a move because of this. But even if you beat anyone up, never aim for the face. This was not only an embarrassment to Jin Wuxiang, but also the Jin clan behind him. Even the first prince or the fourth prince would not slap Jin Wuxiang impulsively unless the latter had really done something extremely foolish and idiotic. Who did Ling Han think he was to actually dare to do such a thing? Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 60. Sitting Up High. Ling Han was a man of simple principles. If you do not bother me, then I will not bother you either. But if you dare to mess with me, then you should be well prepared to suffer my wrath. You've messed with me several times now, do you really think I'm an easy target? He asked coldly. Jin Wuxiang really felt like he wanted to weep himself to death. At noontime, it was he who had been flung out, and now, it was also he who had been slapped. All these times, it was he who was on the losing side, okay. And you still dare to say all this, there's no such logic in this world. Of course, he would definitely not reflect on the fact that it was he who had provoked Ling Han intentionally at both occasions. You can be proud however you want now, but when my elder brother comes later, you'll suffer. Jin Wuxiang said harshly. He believed that his elder brother would definitely avenge him later. Pa, pa, pa. Ling Han gave him 3-4 consecutive slaps. There was no sign that he had taken Jin Wuxiang's threat seriously. I'll be waiting. With these last words, Ling Han, Lu Yutong and Xuanhuan entered the prince's residence together. How come you're even more of a troublemaker than I am? The seventh princess sighed in a sorrowful manner. You've really caused a disaster now. That was a brat from the Jin clan. Although he himself is not worthy of respect, his elder brother is Jin Wuji. Haven't I told you how powerful Jin Wuji is? And yet you still dare to provoke him. I have to quickly inform Master, and ask him to clean up the mess for you. I'm not going to get implicated in this. Ling Han gave a light rap to her head, and said, if you hadn't harbored evil intentions, and had not failed to issue me an invitation, how would there have been so many problems? What evil intentions? You must not wrong an innocent person. Xuanhuan quickly shook her head vigorously, looking like a rattled drum. She was definitely not going to admit to such a crime. I had just forgotten. Forgotten. Okay. Big sister Lu, don't you agree with me? She asked Lu Yutong, acting like a spoiled child. Lu Yutong maintained her cool demeanor, causing Xuanhuan's eyes to light up. She really felt that this big sister was an individual with quite a personality. The three of them arrived at the main hall. There was close to 100 tables here, but they weren't the usual round tables. Instead, they were minuscule long tables, which at most would be able to accommodate 2 people at a time. This setting allowed each guest their own table. If they had brought a companion, then it wouldn't be too much of a tight fit for 2 people to sit at one table. These tables were arranged in rows of 5, from the doorway of the main hall and further in. Obviously, the further in your table was, the higher your status was. Currently, most of the tables were occupied. Aside from an empty table in the first row, the other empty tables were all arranged after the 10th row. Just find some place to sit, Xuanhuan said, the corners of her lips lifting up slightly to reveal a crafty smile. She had posed a difficult problem to Ling Han, as she wanted to see where this guy would choose to sit. It was difficult because there was only one empty table at the front, but this was the first row, and only the strongest of the younger generation had the right to sit there. Ling Han's cultivation level was obviously still far from this level. But if Ling Han obediently went to sit at the back, this showed that he did not have much ambition and would capitulate easily. Yet Ling Han did not ponder much about this so-called difficult problem. He only gave a short nod, and without thinking much, headed to the first row. Although he had let go of the glory of his last life, he still possessed the heart of an elite warrior. Since there was an empty space in the first row, he would naturally choose to sit there. Xuanhuan stuck out her tongue, and thought that there would be a good show to watch soon. But she did not overstep her limits. She quickly commanded a servant to go forth to Heaven's medicine pavilion to inform Zhang Weishan. Otherwise, if things became too much to handle, it would not be easily ended. Seeing Ling Han stride towards the front, those who had already occupied their seats all revealed shocked expressions, as they all thought the same thing. Who is this guy? Looks like he's going to sit in the front row. But out of the 5 tables in the first row, 4 were already occupied. The last empty table also actually had an owner. It's just that he hadn't arrived yet. It belonged to Jin Wuji. Was this guy an idiot? He even dared to steal Jin Wuji's table. Interesting. The 4 people who were already seated in the first row all smiled. Some of them more mocking smiles, while there were some who were genuinely smiling in curiosity, wondering whether this brat was an arrogant fool or someone who had real power to back it up. However, very soon their gazes became focused on Lu Yutong. This young girl was really too beautiful. Though she seemed a little cold, this was also a kind of temperament. Moreover, she was very strong. Could it be that she was the master, and the brat in front was only her attendant? It was more logical to think this way. PFFF. The 4 of them almost choked, because they saw Ling Han sit down boldly while Lu Yutong sat at his side. With this, who was the master and who was the attendant was easily seen. It was really inconceivable. Such an extraordinarily beautiful and extremely powerful maiden could only be seated at this brat's side. Who exactly was he? He must be the heir to some great clan. Otherwise, he would not have dared to take Jin Wuji's table. Ha 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 ha. I've made you all wait. Clear laughter was heard all of a sudden as a tall, thin man strode out of the inside door of the main hall. He had a majestic gait, presenting a kingly visage. This was not a ruler in terms of power, but in terms of a kind of confidence in himself. Greetings, 4th Prince. Everyone stood from their seats. Now that the host was here, the guests would of course have to stand up and pay due respects. The 4th Prince had a table of his own, and his table was the furthermost in front. Moreover, he sat facing the doorway, while the others sat facing the walls. Sit, everyone, please be seated. The 4th Prince, Qi Yongyi's eyes swept over his guests, and when he discovered an unfamiliar face in the first row, he could not help feeling startled. Who might this be? Why had he taken Jin Wuji's table? But his gaze quickly spotted Lu Yutong, and his heart was stirred. He also belonged to the Huyang Academy, so he naturally recognized Lu Yutong to be a noble daughter of the Lu clan, yet she actually sat at Ling Han's side. This, how could Qi Yongyi not experience a great shock at this? But he was still the 4th Prince, and so was naturally very shrewd. There was no change in the expression on his face, though his eyes had still stayed on Lu Yutong's figure for a few moments longer. This did not attract the suspicion of others, because this was a normal occurrence. She was so beautiful that any man would want to stare at her for a moment longer. Let me introduce to you. Qi Yongyi revealed a smile, confident and calm, displaying fully his royal air. He pointed at the first person seated at the first table towards the left in the first row. This is Li Dongyue, Brother Li. He's the personally taught disciple of the sect master of Stone Wolf sect. Brother Li, it has been a long time. You're about to break through to Gushing Spring Tier, right? Li Dongyue laughed heartily, and said, 4th Prince, you should not tease me. Even you have not broken through to Gushing Spring Tier, how is it possible that I would be qualified too? Brother Li is really too modest. Qi Yongyi pointed at the second person towards the left. This is Bailey Tengyun, the son of the sect master of Bailey sect. Bailey Tengyun was extremely young. He seemed to be only about 17 or 18 years old. He was a little cool, only giving a light HM as greeting. Qi Yongyi did not take it to heart, and continued his round of introductions. Next is Chia Zhongguang, Brother Chia. He came from Fuyang Town, and he's only 18 years old. He did not participate in the previous Dayuan tournament, but I believe that he will definitely show extraordinary talent in this tournament. This is Lu Yu, Brother Lu. Like Brother Chia, he's also 18 years old, and I am very optimistic about his upcoming performance. And the last, Chi Yongyi's gaze stopped on Ling Han's figure, and his words paused. He did not continue to speak, because he did not know how to continue. However, he did not feel the slightest bit awkward. Instead, he only smiled and looked at Ling Han expectantly, as if waiting for Ling Han to introduce himself. He could also admit that he himself was curious about Ling Han's identity. Who exactly was he to be able to have the noble daughter of the Lu clan serve by his side? End of the chapter. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao will be read in 5 chapters for every Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Sunday. Please leave this sound novel and press subscribe, follow, and the bell so you don't miss any new clips as well. See you.